Hi, this is Jim Steinmeyer. Welcome to the July Genie and welcome to Genii Speak. This month, we're celebrating some anniversaries, some important anniversaries. The first of which is our cover story on Penn and Teller. You may have heard of them. We have John Lovick, who's written a fantastic article about the formation of that team, which was 50 years ago this year, and the secrets of their success and the secrets of their survival, and fascinatingly, the story of how they came together and how they became the bad boys of magic. It's a great story, and I know you'll enjoy it. Teamed with that is Chloe Olowitz's look at their show, Fool Us, a kind of behind the scenes look, talking to the producers and the magic consultants and how they go about putting that show together and make the magicians look so good. We also have a great celebration, 50th anniversary this year of the Magic Castle Juniors program. And Sean McMaster and Kristen Lambert have written great articles about how that came together. Kristen tells the story from an insider's point of view of what it was like to be part of that group. Don't miss this month. Our columnist David Regal stands at the counter and talks to you about picking out tricks as he was a youngster and the ones that impressed him. David Kay, of course, is back with a fascinating look at some false economy in the world of shows. Lindsay Benner and Jason Bishop, our guest columnists, write about their own specialties. Don't miss those features. We have John gone back with the Chamber of Secrets. John is writing about an amazing piece of apparatus that is literally push button magic, and you will be amazed to see how sophisticated and astonishing it was, and also who performed it. We have Boyce and Holtzclaw back, Alex Boyce and Matthew Holtzclaw, writing about their perspective on manipulation acts. And you have a great opportunity to sit at the table with Inez and watch a brilliant torn restored card routine. Is it really a torn restored card routine? It's a pieces to card routine, and it's beautifully told through the pictures. Blake Vogt is back, and he has a special surprise guest. I don't need to say anything else about that, except stay tuned and you'll see the interview I did with him about that column, and more important, about Blake's approach to this column and how he invents magic. And then stay tuned because I did an interview with our other columnist, Anunnya George, who came to us from Dubai and is talking about his interest in magic and his viewpoint of what magicians are getting right and getting wrong. So enjoy July. We'll see you next month in August. And thanks very much for supporting us. Bye. Okay, we're here with Genii Speak, and I'm speaking to Blake Vogt. Blake is doing
Speaking.
a column for us, and I know you've been reading it, and I know you've been watching the videos because we hear from people about how much they enjoy it. And it's been a fantastic thing to read. This month, I got to participate a little bit in the middle of it, so I got to see it from the inside. So I wanted to take advantage of that and twist Blake's arm and get him to talk about kind of what he's been doing the last few months in Genie.
Awesome. Yeah,
So
this is
what's the inspiration behind all this? I mean, obviously you have to do a certain amount of this creating under pressure, but what was your inspiration in terms of putting this together as an exercise?
I love magic podcasts. I love listening to interviews and I don't think I'm a good interviewer, so I thought I could never do one like that or there's already so many good ones out there that already exists. And then there's a podcast on comedy out there that I like a lot that a comedian Mike Birbiglia started during the pandemic when there
Right.
weren't as many shows. He started working out material with other comedians on a podcast. So they would try jokes out on each other and workshop them. And I realized it was the exact same thing that I do with my buddies when we're creating magic is, try things out and bounce stuff off of each other. And I thought, man, that would be cool if there was a magic version of that. So that was the real root of it. And then someone named Jim Steinmeyer spoke to me about possibly having an article. And I thought, man, well, that would be the ultimate version of this would be to speak to someone with a time limit with the understanding that it was going to be published, which was a great pressure.
Right.
Yeah.
Nothing focuses you more than a deadline, of course.
No, no. I remember I remember I got to work on, I know you've worked on tons of movies too, but I worked on Now You See Me One a little bit behind the scenes. And then I was with the writer and kind of speaking to him when Now You See Me Two was kind of being brought up.
Right.
And Now You See Me One did really well in the movies, opening weekend, second weekend. So he said, you know what? I think I might get to write a second movie.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, that's so cool. And then it kept doing good, and then it got released globally, and it sold so many tickets. The first one, he said, "Uh-oh, now I have to write it, and it's worse because it's more pressure because they're gonna make it even if I write a bad one."
Right.
And I was like, well, that level of pressure is interesting, like knowing like this is gonna be put in a really prestigious magazine. So it almost like inspires you to do something worth putting in there.
Well, it is great. I mean, I have to say, I wasn't 100% convinced you were going to be able to do it. Is that a terrible thing to say? I mean, I had no doubt
No.
you could do it, but it's that whole thing of really translating it to a magazine and kind of formalizing it and making it work. And I know Noah does a lot of work behind the scenes and makes it
Yeah.
work. And you've been working with people to put this all together, so it's really fantastic. What is it that what are you finding? I know you're only 5 or 6 in, but what are you finding? You finding people work really differently? I know you've kind of started with buddies of yours that you've worked with, so you're probably experiencing you're working with a known quantity to a certain extent. But what do you find about the differences?
Man, I think, well, first of all, the similarities of it all with the people and just the work outside of the podcast, like how I work and stuff, the big similarity is I find that I work really well under parameters. It's
Right.
like if someone told me you have $1 million a year, invent a magic trick, I couldn't do it. But the
So that
minute,
contract didn't work out for you, huh? When you had that?
no,
No.
it hasn't yet. No.
Okay.
But the minute someone's like, you know, David Blaine needs to do this on Kimmel next week.
Right.
Here's what he did last time. He'll probably only have a day to learn it. Like
Yeah.
all of a sudden, the more you put parameters on a problem, I find the easier it gets, and it has manifested itself in this challenge or this series because I tell everybody that the only thing I speak to the people about so far before I hit record is it's gonna be 1 hour. This is what it is. This is what I've done. And there's no, like, we did it. There
Yeah.
was no faking it whatsoever. But just knowing there's an hour for some reason and knowing what
Yeah.
it has to translate to a reader. It has to, all of these things. That has made kind of everything go pretty similarly because we speak about a bunch of stuff for the first half, and then it's almost like a really condensed version of a project
Right.
because I'll work with a magician or on something. Let's say that's a week long. For the first few days, we're kind of talking about everything.
Right.
And then we realize, oh, we only have a couple of days. And then on the last day, it kind of all comes together. That kind of happens in the hour. It's like
Yeah.
for the first 30 minutes, we spitball, then we kind of narrow in on something for 20. And then when we realize there's 10 minutes left, it's like, well, let's get a version done, you know.
Right. Right.
But everybody does. I feel like everybody's kind of created, like you said, Dan, Justin, and Danny, I've
Yeah.
worked with a lot.
Yeah.
I've always wanted to work with you, and I've always wanted to work with Jay Sankey.
Yeah.
So I didn't know if those would be completely different from the other ones, but they felt similar in a sense that they were just fun. And I did it the same way I did it with you and Jay as I did it with the guys I've been friends with for 10 years.
Yeah. I think it's safe. Well, I can speak for myself. I don't have any special secrets.
No, no.
It's the same swinging at the baseball and hoping that you hit. There's a great
Oh,
quote. There's a great quote that you'll love that I've used a couple times from a American architect, Louis Sullivan, who said every problem contains and suggests its own solution.
Ooh.
And the other great thing is if you ever see a Louis Sullivan building and you stand in front of it and you see what he did, you go, "Oh my God, that's what he was talking about." Because he's solving problems in incredibly beautiful ways.
Wow.
And yeah, it's like if you can say the problem clearly enough, it's like halfway done.
Yes. Oh, 100%. That's a great, oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, yeah.
That's,
So I mean, I know you also perform.
mhm.
On occasion, you'll get on stage and do your own stuff, and maybe you even do stuff that isn't your own stuff. But what is it? How do you compare, watching other people do your things and doing your own things and then coming up with stuff for yourself? Is it easier or harder? I mean, is there less pressure? What's your advantage to that?
I find it way harder to create for myself. I
Okay.
find it way easier. I'll try to trick myself sometimes while working on my own stuff to treat it like it's not mine. But I yeah, I take it takes way longer to work on stuff for myself than I think a lot of times because when I'm working for someone else, there are those parameters.
Right.
So when I'm working for myself, it's kind of I can do, whenever I say it's ready, it's ready. And that's goes against me a lot of the times because I end up working on something a lot longer. Um, but then I get really excited when it finally goes up. And like I just did a new thing a few weeks ago on a Disney cruise ship,
Mhm.
which I didn't know. It took a long time to get approved on a Disney cruise ship, and I had only done a set like my audition contract, but then I booked a bunch of other ones. So
Right.
I called a few friends who I trusted who had done Disney contracts, and I said, "How does it work for trying out new stuff? Do I have
Yeah.
to go through the whole approval process again for every trick?" And they both kind of, I won't name names, but they both kind of said the same thing, which was if you're not messing up and if no one's saying anything bad about your shows, you're safe. So I went ahead and did a brand new thing and it went well. So no one said anything. So it was a nice motivator.
Yeah, I think you want to be able to use those shows to try material out, and so that's.
Exactly.
But of course, they're obviously, as a corporate entity, they also, want to say, be careful about that stuff.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah,
I love seeing other people do tricks that because I tend to work on something for a very long time and then perform it for a very long time before I release it.
yeah,
And so by the time I release something, I've kind of hit a lull with it or been bored with it. So when I see other people do it, even if they do it the exact same way as me, it's really cool. There's probably like an ego feeding that happens when I see other people get reactions doing it, which is nice and fun. But then the thing that really blows my mind is when I will release something and then I'll see someone do it completely differently
yeah.
in a way that I would have never thought of. And that's really cool and inspiring. And that's probably the most fun because it's like I would have never thought to do that. Um,
Interesting. Yeah, no, I know. It's interesting. It's interesting. I mean, I had
how do
similar.
you feel about all of that?
Well, no, I mean, I wasn't a strong performer, and so what I learned very early on is that the great combination is that you do what you do best, and you give it to people to do what they do best.
Hmm.
I've always had performers that I worked really well with. Somehow I could get into their vibe of what was good for them.
Oh, cool.
Also, they just did that material really well. And there's nothing better than seeing someone do something with it that you hadn't thought of,
Yes.
or I shouldn't even say that you hadn't thought of it, bring something to it that you couldn't have brought to it.
Yes.
But there is something also important, I think, about the ability to actually stand up there and do it yourself, because that's like where the rubber meets the road, and you've got to be able to do that. And so it's interesting that you were able to, kind of try your own stuff out and then determine it from there.
Yeah, it's fun. It's scary and exciting, but really rewarding. Like doing, it's always the scariest thing doing, putting something new in, I feel like in front of a like paying real audience. But then even just getting it done is so rewarding, even if it's not the reaction you want, or it's like, just getting it on its feet, I feel like is such a milestone that I find that I will work on something for like, 75% of it is me working on it by myself. And then once I get it on stage, then it gets better faster
Yeah.
because the audience is so I mean, as long as I record the audio at least, and I'll try to remember myself, but the audience is the best feedback because it's unanimous.
What's your advice for people? I mean, I've had people all my life say, "Oh, I can't come up with stuff myself," and I realize that I mean, not to make a big deal of it, they probably can't because I mean, if they're not comfortable with it, they shouldn't be doing it. But there are people I think who are tempted to do that and are held back by all those things you've just been talking about, about doing it for the first time and the pressure of it and not being sure of the material. And, what are your shortcuts of that in terms of, encouraging people to do that? I mean, I've talked to performers about insulating stuff in a position in their show where it's guarded, they can put something in and they know they can't die, which I think, is a trick that everyone kind of learns at a certain point. But
Totally.
what do you look out for in terms of protecting material as it's being worked on?
Same thing, sandwiching it, putting it in a good place in the show, even if that's ultimately not where I want it to be.
Right.
Like I'll sandwich an opener somewhere in the middle. I would never open my show, I don't think, with a brand new opener unless it's the only place it could go. Um, I kind of alluded to this a little bit with you on our when we recorded, but a lot of times if it's conceptually able to be scaled down, I will test the stage trick close up because it's just so much easier and low stakes, like for family, friends, stranger at a party, family gathering. If it's a concept that I'm trying to wrap my head around or a premise, that I can scale down to a close-up trick, I'll do that. And there's just something about getting any sort of reaction with it that tells me like, oh, you know, at least I won't die on stage with
Right.
this.
Right.
You know, I'll rehearse the living hell out of any sort of method so that that's not a factor. Either it's automatic or there's so many contingencies built in. I would never do a trick on stage where I'm not, if I was 99% sure in the method or how to get there,
Yeah.
you know. I heard a really interesting thing yesterday that was really smart. Again, I still listen to that podcast, Working It Out, Mike Birbiglia one, and a comedian was talking about working out a story in the show, and he has an out for the story. So he knows the ending of the story, and he has the story structured in a way where the minute he feels the audience starting to go, he'll just throw in the ending to the story. And I thought that was such an interesting technique. I don't think you can necessarily do that with all magic tricks, but just knowing the ending so well, like this is where we're going, you know, timing is a nightmare too. Sometimes figuring out the timing of a trick.
Yeah.
Like I know all of my material, I feel like so well because I've workshopped it at comedy clubs, at Comedy Magic Club in Hermosa Beach, where when you go to perform at a comedy club, they say you've got 6 minutes tonight. You've got 11 minutes on stage. You've got 8 minutes. So you have to know
Yeah.
pretty well everything. But putting a new thing in, you can only talk it out in your head or in the car and in your house into a video camera so much before just doing it.
Do you start with like heavy worked out presentations on new stuff to bolster yourself, or do you kind of leave that so that develops? In other words, you leave air for that.
Yeah, I
You
lead
could argue both of those, but
totally. I've worked with people who do both things. I tend to work better informally with scripting and stuff. I'll do bullet points sometimes,
right,
or I'll know like an opening line I might write and memorize, or if there's like a crux of the premise that could be confusing if I, because I'll talk way too much on the first try of anything. I know that about myself, but I've worked with people who are the opposite. If they don't rehearse something, it'll be super short.
right,
I over explain. I probably in my day-to-day life too. I'll over talk, I'll over explain. So sometimes I'll write a line or two and memorize them. And that's the only thing I have memorized for the whole 6 minute trick.
right.
And maybe I'll have the ending kind of memorized, but then I will not do it. And I learned this from working with people and working material out for them. And then I found something that works for me. I will then do that trick at least 5 to 10 times on stage. And then like the 10th time, I'll take the recording of it and then there's programs and free websites that will take the audio and put it into a script.
Mhm.
And then I'll take that script and I'll get rid of all the uhs and ums and cut out all the fat of what I said. And then I'll just read that script a few times and then the trick will get better that way.
Yeah,
But I've never really fully memorized the script.
yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. It's also interesting to me how, on top of everything, how mysterious the process is of where something falls in a show. You know,
Oh.
that wonderful slash horrible thing where suddenly a trick you've been doing like goes over the top, and then you go, "What just happened?"
Mm-hmm.
It's all. I mean, it's as mysterious as it just bombing.
Yeah.
But
That's so
but we
funny.
know what to do when it bombs. We know what to do when the trick bombs. We know
Oh my
like how to
gosh.
shore it up or get rid of it or what we're doing. But I've worked with performers and suddenly a trick, hits. And the only thing I've realized is sometimes it's like where it falls in a show, what the piece
Totally.
was before it, what the audience was thinking for the last 10 minutes about this performer, what they were waiting to see you do and all that stuff. And then you go, oh my God, you mean I've got to be analyzing all that stuff too? This is crazy. So,
I I worked on a trick one time forever that got medium reactions and I thought it was really good.
mhm,
And without getting into the whole trick, I would have like the person on stage reveal a card and then the person out in the audience then revealed that it matched, that it was under their seat or something. That's
mhm,
like the oversimplified version of it. And I always got claps. And then I felt like an idiot because the day I realized, oh, the person in the audience needs to show their card first because no one can really see them. And then the person on stage needs to be the confirmation.
right.
It got like all of a sudden, and I was like, where was this? This was so obvious. Why was it ever the other way?
Yeah.
But yeah, I those are things are exciting to me.
Yeah.
Uh,
Now, I mean, that's also some of the stuff that sometimes when you hand stuff off to a performer, they just get because
mhm,
they have an instinct about that stuff. At least in my case, they'll have an instinct about that stuff.
mhm,
It's sort of automatic that I won't have necessarily about like how they're now going in for the kill.
totally.
And that's like what they do best and what that works with. Yeah, I
Totally. And
work with lots of people. Who do you, I mean, not asking you to condemn anybody, but who do you like seeing your stuff done by? I mean, or have you over the years?
oh man. Well, my favorite over the years is hands down Justin Willman
Right.
because I've he's done so much for me personally and so nice and
Yeah.
I love just being around him. But I really like his performance style.
Yeah.
And the double-edged sword of that is I've worked on stuff over the years where he's the only guy I've worked for where I've had that feeling of like, oh man, I would have loved to do this.
Right.
Which is a good and bad, it's an inspired, not bad feeling, but like in
Right.
motivating feeling. Whereas the stuff I've gotten to work for Copperfield or Blaine or other magicians are so character specific that, and I think Justin and I are different on stage, hopefully, but I think that still I could do a version of any of the material I've worked on for him. And it's so fun to see him. Also, like you were saying, like seeing a really good performer take something and just put their own thing into it.
Yeah.
I've just seen him murder with things that he and I were sitting around a couch talking about. And seeing somebody that has the ability to take a really small thing and then really do it justice in front of an audience is, I love that. That's really inspiring, I think.
Yeah, no, I agree. That's the exciting part about this is seeing a performer, working with a performer, and then kind of understanding what they do, and
Hmm.
makes you feel slightly inadequate. It makes me feel slightly inadequate, more than slightly inadequate, when you
Same.
understand kind of how suddenly what they can bring to a trick.
Totally.
Yeah. Well,
I
great.
agree.
It's been fantastic doing these. I just had an inside glimpse at how it works,
Yeah.
which means that at the end, you drag someone's sorry ass over the finish line, and
No.
and I
No.
appreciate that. No, I mean it's fun watching you kind of like watching all these levers kind of get pulled and seeing how this all happens. And
Well, you do the same thing. We just did it
I
quicker.
know, I know it's really interesting. I always used to talk to when Don Wayne was around and doing great stuff all the time, and people used to say, "Oh, you must work a lot with Don Wayne," and the answer is, I never worked with Don Wayne.
Oh,
Because,
wow.
here's, I mean, I knew him well, and this is true of I think a lot of people in this business. We wouldn't both be on the same show.
Right.
Why would we be working together?
Right.
And there were little times when we kind of overlapped on stuff, like a Mark Kalin project where he was involved, or a Copperfield project where suddenly David asked me for input or something. But I mean, it is that funny thing where it's like everybody feels like an island doing it their own way.
Yeah.
Uh, and then you kind of find out, oh yeah, they all get the same problems, and they're all solving it, trying to solve it the same way. And
This is my the dream of this project was, the ultimate goal was to get to do it with people who I haven't overlapped with yet on stuff. And the next few people I have in mind, and the next one I asked, who said yes, who I can tell you once we stop recording or whatever. But like all these people I'm gonna push myself to do the rest of the series with people I don't know
yeah,
because that's fun, and I have never gotten to do that before. So
yeah, no, that's definitely interesting. And that, I mean, that's always, in my life, that's been inspiring, working with people like that who you trying to figure out what it is, how they're coming to solve a problem. And
same,
yeah,
same.
you know,
Yep.
yeah, those differences are sometimes small, but they're really significant. So it's really been fun reading this, and it's been fun being involved. And I know that the readers are enjoying it, enjoying the work that you're doing with it, and that Noah's putting it all together for the magazine. And of course, they'll find it online too. They'll find it online on your what do you have a
I
channel?
have it everywhere, but YouTube is probably where I'm pushing people. It's just
Okay.
Blake Vogt on YouTube for inventing magic.
Okay, great. Hey, thanks, Blake.
Thanks,
Keep up the
Jim.
good work. All right, thanks. Bye. Okay, so I'm in Burbank, California, and I'm talking to Annanya George, who is in Dubai right now. And you're reading him in the magazine, in his column. And he's in this month writing about a really interesting subject about magicians' desires to work on their own material, not just as a creative exercise, but as like a kind of culturally creative exercise. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I would say that. I mean, it's less of like I think it's more how do you so in my head it's like how do you express yourself through a magic trick? How do you turn things like a
Right,
vanish or reappearance into this beautiful soliloquy about the nature of life and everything in it?
right, right. And I mean, we tend to do that a lot through what I would say is writing insufferable patter that tries to make a silk trick something that doesn't feel like a silk trick. Uh,
Yeah.
but of course, I'm giving the terrible example of it, which isn't fair. But yeah, I think what you raise is a really interesting point, which is that it's very hard to disconnect the patter from the trick, um,
Hmm.
and be creatively responsible for only part of that. If
Yeah, no, 100%. Like it's very interesting to me. So I was recently working with this magician out in New York, trying to like get his act together, like not metaphorically, but like literally. And we were talking about like restructuring his trick to fit his own goals. And he did the classic thing of long patter trick and then like two or three lines at the end that tie everything together. And I'm going, why? Why is that like a thing? Why is that a pattern that we almost always get down to? So yeah.
guilty, guilty. I've done that.
I mean,
Even
so
worse,
have
I've
I.
written that for other people. Yeah, no, it's a very tempting way to do stuff, and of course, the problem is that when it starts working, you just go, well, let's do that again, and
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, I think part of it is also so much like I think the thing that really helped me understand this was in college. I worked with this choreographer on one of the plays my writing partner and I wrote together. And when she would talk about movement, it was like it was like you were listening to someone who really understood how the body works within space. And so she talked about this idea that like movements, like specific movements, communicate specific things. And the thing that I find we get stuck in as magicians is like when we learn how to do like a flip stick, we learn to do the flip stick in that exact same motion. But we never really think about why we do the flip stick the way we do, or why we sleeve things the way we do. Because those specific movements have their own like piece of communication. And so when we write our tricks down, we never think about how is our body interacting with the space when we're trying to like talk about what we're trying to talk about.
right.
And we almost like compartmentalize meaning, trick, and we like explore both those things in parallel, which is kind of tough. It took a long time for me to like break out of that, but it's still one of those interesting things that I see a lot of people do that I find like noteworthy, at least.
Right. Now it's very interesting because we're really good at doing that in magic. And I know I've said to you that I can see historically that magicians don't like kind of don't get popular culture and link themselves to it. There's a kind
Mm-hmm.
of temptation that they can hold themselves apart from it. Like,
Mm-hmm.
it's such a pure art. It's like opera, it's such a pure art that we don't really need to be working in the real world. We can be doing it by ourselves. And that's often an
Yeah.
excuse, I think, for not putting 100% into those presentations. It's interesting because I think why people may have seen you, and we're going to talk about this month because we're linking to some of your video. The first thing I
That's
saw,
sick.
the first thing I saw was this video that we're linking to,
Yeah.
which is really an amazing thing for magicians to see. It's a great video. It's a fun video to watch. It's really well produced, but it's
Thank
also
you.
really interesting for magicians to watch because there's a little bit of cringeworthy stuff where you're going, I can't believe he's really talking about this. Um, and it's about, what happens when you give someone a magic trick and have them learn it, and how does an outsider come to view this, and what are they taking
Hmm.
advantage of? And you did it. Talk a little about what you did. It wasn't a complete outsider. It was a
Yeah.
performer. Yeah.
So a little backstory to this, because I cringe a little bit when I watch that video as well, only because it started out as an essay. I was applying for this like PhD program in performance studies, and so I wrote down this entire essay because I thought like the performative steps, or like the steps that we take to learn a magic trick or to perform it or to get it like ready for someone else to view it in, was like essay worthy. It was very interesting to like study that. What is that phenomenon when we get a trick from the stores? How do we like turn that into a performance? And so that's so like part of the dialogue in the video, or at least like the spoken word stuff, is feels like an academic essay, and that's the reason,
Mhm.
because it literally is. But the thought where that came from was this like question of like, is the way we learn magic broken? Like, is there something about that structure that is like not working. Because every time I would watch, when I was growing up, I like we don't have magic shops here in Dubai, like and so when I was growing up, it was mostly like YouTube tutorials. I'm one of those people. And so what I noticed was five different people in the local magic scene learned the same trick from the same like tutorials, and this could be the exact same thing as like buying a trick from a magic shop. Five different people learned the same trick from a tutorial, and their performance, including like patter and the way they move, is exactly the same. And that was like something that I kept in the back of my mind for years. And I was like, is there a reason why that happens? Can it like is there because that makes no sense. Like if you have a trick, if you tell someone, here's a trick and do whatever you want with it, now go perform it. Shouldn't ideally we have five different performances of that trick? And so I decided to like test that out. I thought it would be very interesting to get a comedian friend of mine who's honestly the most creative comedian I know. I think right now he's doing this like alternative comedy show with a puppet. Weird stuff, but one of my favorite bits from him is like he just acts hammered on stage in a cat in a hat costume, reading Dr. Seuss books, and his like fiance, she walks up on stage and like breaks up with him live. And like you see him just like cry and break down. It doesn't sound very funny, but trust me,
Right.
it's hilarious when you're in the room because it's very Kaufman. And so I thought, what would this guy be able to do with a magic trick? What would he be able to do with like a structure? Because it's not like he's somebody who doesn't think creatively about the stuff. He doesn't deconstruct the stuff. And so I decided to teach him the invisible deck because that's like one of the easiest things you can teach anyone. You can just give someone an invisible deck, tell them how it works, and they're able to do it. And I thought that would be an amazing way to also like determine what a magician fooler might be. Because while he was learning all of that, while we were going through that entire process, I thought, wouldn't it be interesting if like I came up with a way to do the invisible deck that he doesn't know of? And so when I show it to him at the end of the entire process, he has like no clue. So it was multiple different things working in tandem with each other. But the most interesting thing that I found, so I gave him the invisible deck, gave him a week to work on the performance, and then we went out to like Washington Square Park and performed it for strangers. The most interesting part of that entire experience, I think, was after the fact when we sat down at a diner, and it's all in the video, and we talked about like the nature of a magic trick. He himself put forth this idea that like maybe what's like the interesting part of a magic trick is less the trick alone and more the expectation or the persona of the magician. And I was like, that's fascinating
Mhm.
because when we were filming these tricks, I was just following him around with a camera, and he'd stop the people, be like, "Hey, I'm a magician. We're filming a little bit of a special." Lies, and can we show you a trick? He would then do the trick, and audience would love it. They would like, because he's doing it pretty well. And after that, we'd like reveal to them what they were actually a part of. That I'm actually the magician, and we've been doing this, and their faces literally went from like this to and it was one of those moments which was like, what is that? What's that doing? Like what is that happening right there? If we watch magic for the tricks, shouldn't that smile remain?
Right.
Like why was there a frown? So we just like dove deep into that and started talking about it and started to discuss what's that? What is that part of magic?
Right.
And came up with a conclusion that, oh, it's the magician. It's the expectation of a magician.
So all of those are teases about how this person really is an amazing person, can do wonderful stuff. you're lucky to be in the
Yeah.
presence of that person, presumably.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, like it's it. I don't know. I don't know, really. I think yeah, I mean, in a way, yes. Because I think it's a lot like in a fairy tale, right? Like you're just going about your day, and suddenly you're in the presence of someone who's like, "Oh, look, man, I can read your mind. In fact, I've already predicted it."
Right.
What? How? Through this deck of cards right here. Wild that it's a deck of cards, but through this deck of cards right here. And yeah, just having that expectation shattered was very interesting, and I kind of feel bad about doing it
It's a
looking
really
back.
fascinating tape to watch for a magician, I would say, especially because you're really seeing a lot of these things tested and being played out with a talented performer who's trying to figure out, the way into all of this. And it's
Hmm.
interesting watching that. What do you think magicians? I mean, I know you look at stuff, and what's interesting about it is you look at stuff, in terms of popular culture, and you use analogies of advertising and filmmaking and scripting and theater about like how this all comes together. What do you think magicians don't take advantage of today? What do you think what do you think they're missing, I guess is what I say in terms of the work that they're doing and the planning that they do.
Uh, that's a very hard one because I'm thinking about it. It's a very hard one to answer.
Yeah.
Because like it's very easy to say, what are they not taking advantage of? Oh well, it's very easy to say, yeah, what are they not taking advantage of? But not so easy to say what are they taking advantage of?
Right.
Um, I
That's
think
interesting. It's
so.
interesting to start with the positive aspect of it. What do you
Yeah,
see that they're taking advantage of in a good way? Yeah.
I think what we're taking advantage of in a good way is like the fact that we have a community. The fact that we're so open to talk to each other about this stuff, like the very fact that this magazine exists, like that's an amazing aspect to our craft that I don't think exists anywhere else. Like if you look at comedy communities or even like theater communities, they're not as organized or structured as ours, and I think that's an advantage. But how we use it is kind of suspect because we've all been in those rooms where we feel like we have to fight in order to like be there, in order to like exist.
Right.
But yeah, what are we not taking advantage of, however, is I think like I would always say is the cross-cultural blend that comes from or like the open-mindedness that comes from some of these spaces. Like when I was in New York, one of my favorite rooms to perform in was just like a open mic, out of all places, an open mic at the basement of this theater in Soho. They would do comedy mics there every Thursday, but every Wednesday you'd have like just an insane amount of like uh variety creative acts. So you'd have musicians, you'd have comedians. Sometimes we had this like puppeteer and who did like shadow art, insane stuff. And the further you go into that world, the more like variety mics like that you'll find. Like I
Right.
was once in a clowning show doing one of my tricks that I call "Look at me, I'm Jesus." In a clowning show that basically involved the main clown, the guy putting the whole show together, at a certain point, like stripping almost naked in front of the entire audience. That is the stuff, like I'm not saying go that extreme, but
Right.
that is the kind of stuff that I think we're not taking advantage of, not opening our minds to like what is performatively possible, what is possible on the image side of things. Like what do you what are other people doing that is fascinating, or either in like a train wreck sort of way, or like in like a genuine interest sort of way. There was this like other act I saw a long time ago that I'm like, that needs to be a magic trick one day. It was this burlesque performer who would have like this like jazz drum to her performance, and it would go
Right.
as she would like take off clothing. and then the music would stop and she would read a text from her ex. So she'd like take off her giant glove. You have man hands. And then
Right.
she would take off like her like the stocking. Your legs look like elephant trunks. You know, like I'm like that needs to be a magic trick.
Right.
That's gotta be a magic trick someday. So it's one of those things. Like we're so stuck in our structures that we haven't opened ourselves up to these like external influences, which I think make some amazing premises for
Right. Right.
tricks.
No, I think that's magicians trade on the fact that magic is only seen in certain places usually. Uh,
Hmm.
it's in Las Vegas or it's at a kid's party or it's in a sideshow or something. And so it's all quite predictable about when you're seeing it. And so you can always draw on those images. But it also keeps
Hmm.
you from using different combinations because it's all kind of limited to those worlds that's
Right.
part of our acceptance, I think.
But but I also think like part of the reason why we expect in those places is because we've kind of worked to make that more possible.
Yeah.
There's a show in New York, Monday Night Magic.
Mhm.
Like that's built around the expectation of, yeah, you're gonna have magicians, you're gonna have close-up magicians. Even like Flavors of Magic was built around the exact same idea. You're gonna
Mhm.
have like close-up magicians. But like, but but is that all? Like, are magicians doomed forever to like only talk about magic within magic? And so I think like a few years ago, I was interviewing for this artist residency in Amsterdam. It was a studio art residency, so it was like, you make sculptures, you make paintings, and in that entire group of people, there's like this one magician who's just sitting there like, "Hi, I sometimes make automatons." And that was an interesting experience because it was like, oh, that's funny. So we have this like entire space that magicians have not explored before. How do we explore magic in a space like that? And questions like that are like really fire me up because you can. You definitely can. There definitely is a way to do it, but how do we do that? And that's so artistically intriguing for me, if I'm being honest.
No, I know, I know. I mean, I think what people will see is that one of those places you've been using is online in terms of videos and the stuff that you've been putting up. And they're wildly unpredictable and also quite varied in the subjects that you're addressing, as you've also brought to Genie. But yeah, you just said you were telling me before that you've kind of rebranded it and renamed it, and you've refocused
Yes.
your video stuff. Can you tell us a little
Yeah.
where people will find you?
Yeah, so I mean, I'm still in the process of rebranding and finishing that up. I think we should be final with everything by the end of the year. But on YouTube right now, we are Supernatural Hangover.
Okay.
And weird mesh of names, but don't like it. I've been dreaming about this since I was 12. Okay, come on. And so,
Somehow it worked.
uh, somehow it works, yeah. And so like the idea here was I've noticed that there were two main issues that I personally like growing up in a place that's not like very, based in magic. Like I was hanging out with a bunch of magicians in New York and what they told me was like, oh, we went to Magic Live and we got this like free Jerry Nuggets. And I'm like, you guys are spoiled because here in Dubai you couldn't even find a deck of bicycle cards back when I was like learning Magic.
Right.
And so when we're thinking about that kind of stuff, when we're thinking about like access and we're thinking about Magic education, I've found that we don't really have like a very good structure for it. Like I was on this other podcast a couple years ago where someone asked me, "What's the ground floor of magic? How do you get into magic?" And I had no answer for him because, like, what do I say? Like, you learn. you learn a French drop. Like,
Mm.
but that's not the ground floor. Like that's still, you got to learn how to misdirect audiences. You still got to learn how to move and so Supernatural Hangover is I put it together to like address one of those things. And the second thing I wanted to address was like trying to find a way to make discoveries and like artistic expression a priority because we never have any of those spaces in Magic where you can just like walk in and try to like explore whatever you want to explore. So say you're Mario the Maker magician and you want to like spend some time trying to figure out how to break out of the kid show loop. For example, I don't know if he really wants to do that, but say you want to do that, but you don't know what kind of work to create in order to like appeal to adults. And so you come talk to me and you go, hey, I want to do this. And so I go, okay, here are some ideas. Let's work on this together. And those are the two things that I've been meaning to really challenge. Because we don't have that in Magic. We don't have like this structure of distributor that other forms of art do, and we don't have like a good education sort of 1 to 100, like level 1 to 100 sort of thing.
Oh.
So those two things I'm trying to at least tackle, give magicians a space and give them good education.
No, that's really amazing. It's very interesting because everything I've now found always ties together mysteriously in the issue. The issue is
Hmm.
the issue is my guide, and every issue has these kind of weird connections where things start connecting. And we have an obituary, unfortunately, an obituary for Eberhard Rees, who was a wonderful German magician, and Topaz writes about working with him, as he was really his
Hmm.
mentor. And of course, Eberhard Rees was one of these guys, known by a very small circle of people in Germany, who like gave of himself to create acts for people. And that's the
Hmm.
only way to say it. It's an amazing story, and readers will want to read that, both for the heartfelt feeling that Topaz brings to it, but also about this personality that was
Yeah.
always part of our world for the last 50 years and doing amazing work very quietly, working with other performers.
Hmm.
So I think we don't recognize that and we don't celebrate that enough. And that stuff is always in the shadows and not always getting recognition in our world. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's interesting. Well, thanks very much. Readers will find his link in Genie. You'll find it here so you can get to his videos. Definitely do that and spend a little time with that. You'll see him in the pages of Genie. He's in the July issue, and we'll see you upcoming. Thanks
Uh,
so much.
Thank you. I appreciate this. Yeah, I hope my word jumbles made sense.
We'll make sure somehow that your word jumbles make sense by the time this is done. We'll put another voice.
Perfect.
We'll put another voice in or something. We'll do something. Okay.
Great. Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you.